Now, friends, when you have to undertake research, you need to bank upon the information which is available with respect to that area of specialization. That means the research which has already been carried out, and you need to survey the literature which is available. And there are large number of sources which can be tapped, and you can collect the relevant literature. And this is what review of related literature is. So in this particular session, we are going to focus on this very aspect of research methodology, that and Rand's corporation, while laying down the standards of high quality research, they have indicated that the study should demonstrate understanding of related studies. That means whatever research is carried out, it should have some connection, some association with what work has already been carried out. And when they made this as a criteria for high quality research, actually they intended to include that research which is carried out must contribute to the existing body of research, and it must have relationship to the research which has been carried out, and it should, the problem which is taken up, that should be linked to what has already been researched. So whatever areas of further research have been enlisted, they must be linked to. And the study which is taken up, the study findings need to be discussed in the light of the previous research which has been carried out. So review of related literature forms an important and integral part of any research work which is taken up by any person. So in this session, what I intend to do is just try to find an answer to these basic questions related to review of related literature. So the questions which we'll try to find an answer to includes, is there any problem with the existing way of carrying out or presenting review of related literature? The second important question is, what is actually review of related literature? What does it involve? And why is it essential to carry out review of related literature? That means what purposes the review of related literature serves for a researcher. Then we'll try to find out what are the various sources from where the related literature can be tapped. Then what is the systematic process of carrying out review of related literature? So the very first question, is there any problem with the existing way of carrying out or presenting review of related literature? I would seek your response to this question. Maybe the participant in ETBs today, anybody who would like to throw light on the way the review is carried out. Do you find it is appropriate or it has certain drawbacks? Anybody who would like to give answer to? Ji. Will you please? You have been, as a teacher, you have been guiding dissertation work or the project work. You might be reading the journals and you go through the review of related literature. You might have referred to number of theses which have been written. So do you find that the adequate explanation is built up, the organization of the review is fine? Go ahead. What is your opinion?
Madam, if it is done step by step, then it is clear. If there is any missing thing, then that process.
Do you find that the existing review of related literature has missing links? Okay. So would you like to, G, please go ahead. Thank you. Okay. So the underlying concepts involved in a particular study, they are not clearly explained in the review of literature. Okay. Any other problem you find in the review? So maybe I request the center to give a response. Do you find any problem? May I request
Good
the
morning.
Hanji,
Good
good morning.
good morning, ma'am. I'm calling from Odisha Gandhi Engineering College.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Ji, sir.
Ma'am, what about the underlined question marks in the presentation? These all are appropriately necessary in the part of research activity. And when we carrying some review of related to any problem statement, we need to think upon their literature survey first of all, their existing problem, what's existing problem with that statement, and if any research analysis require to extending the what experimental part, their literature part. These all these things to be require basically when we go for one review of literature of any concept.
So maybe I'm intervening. My question is the way the review of related literature is presented in the dissertation or the thesis or the project report. Do you find there are gaps, there are problems, there is any difficulty or drawbacks in that? Or do you think the people are able to present and organize the review of related literature logically, meaningfully, and it is presented in the
So, ma'am,
dissertation?
obviously it's a gap gap between their presentation and the organizing and their
What
concept.
kind of what kind of difficulties you perceive or you have observed?
Actually, ma'am, on what that actually that problem statement that what they think for problem statements, the problem statements not be proper way to define in the analysis part. So it's a gap because they
Okay.
initially they think some problem statement, but at the time of implementation, at the time of activity means what analysis part,
That,
they
okay.
not touch that exact point.
Okay, that may be a problem with the execution of the project or the problem or the implementation. So
Yes,
it's a
definitely.
problem in research.
Yes.
But let's go to another center. If anybody would like to throw light on, are there any problems faced with the existing way of carrying out the review? Any other center would like to give a response? Hanji, anybody from Government Engineering College, Haveri?
Yes, madam. Good morning, madam. Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Madam, right now what we are finding in most of the literature is now, what the candidate they do is, they just read the abstract of the paper
Hmm.
and then the conclusion. They,
Okay.
they report only these two, abstracts and the conclusion.
Okay.
The, the overall summary is missing there.
Okay.
That's what is.
So very rightly you have said that now with the availability of information technology tools, what we are doing is going to the web and we access the paper, we access the thesis, and what the students are doing, they just copy the abstract from the paper and include it in the review of related literature. Okay, one problem. Over to Government Engineering College, Hassan. Hassan,
Hello.
go on.
No question, madam.
Hello.
No, sir, I'm not asking for a question. My question to you is the way the review is presented in the dissertation or the thesis, do you find it is adequately represented or are there any problems in that?
Hello.
Hanji, please go on.
Madam, this is from SPFU Bangalore.
Okay,
Madam, actually, we were carried out a literature survey on our research.
right.
Okay. So the results parts, what we got our results
Mhm.
are matching with that some reference.
So,
Can we
yeah,
quote the reference of that person?
okay.
पहिले का
Okay,
Next,
so that is the purpose served by review of related literature.
yeah.
My question is,
Uh,
when the review is presented in dissertation, do you find the people know how to present the review of related literature, how to conclude it, how to identify the gaps, how to classify it? Is the presentation
okay, ma'am.
appropriate?
Yeah, madam, appropriate. We have to,
Appropriate.
yeah, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anybody who differs from this opinion? Any other center would like to? Yes, we have SRM University, University, Malana. Please go ahead.
Yeah, actually, ma'am, in literature review part, normally in thesis, students do the literature review in first year, but while presenting in final year, say fourth year, they do not update the literature. Whatever they did the literature review in first year, they present as such. This is the biggest problem. Recent advances are normally not included in the final version of thesis.
Okay, thank you very much. Now let's have a quick look at what are some of the problems that exist in the way the review of related literature was presented. Now, this is what I have picked up from Shodh Ganga, the dissertation and the thesis submitted in various universities of the country. This is one thesis which included Ellis 1996, Andrews et al. 1996, Das 2004. If you go to another thesis, these were the studies related to mastery learning. And again, I find Yadav 1984, Cole 1986, Salim 1988, Mathur 1988, Aranya 1988, Prasad, and so on. Let's take an example of a thesis submitted in the sciences. Now, here also you find Mendes et al. Again, then Satish Kumar et al. Now, again, you find that these studies have been presented in the review of related literature. Most of the people, when they carry out review, it is presented in chronological order. Now, when it is presented in chronological order, what is not required on the part of the researcher is ability to analyze. I come across a study in 65. I prepare an abstract and put it in my thesis. I get a study of 1984 or 1990 or 1995 or 2000. So I independently look at all the studies which are available and prepare an abstract and include it in my thesis. So it doesn't require any critical ability on the or critical analysis on the part of the researcher. So this is one of the problems we encounter when we go and try to evaluate the dissertation and the thesis work. Then, as rightly said by you, there are gaps in review. One study may be appearing in 1970 and suddenly a person jumps to 1986. What about the 16 years which have elapsed from 17 to 1986? Was there no study undertaken? Was the focus of research shifted from one area to another? This cannot happen that for 16 years, nobody has taken up that particular area of specialization. So many of the theses, as you said, one of the centers, Malana, that students try to gather the review of related literature in their first year, and then they are doing their thesis work in final year, and they are not updating the review of related literature. So maybe at that point of time, the current studies which are available, so you have taken up, say, in 2012, and now you are in fourth year in 2016. So a gap of 3 years, whether you are able to bridge that gap or not, that is a big question mark. So many students would like to include the studies which they have collected in the first year. So gaps in review exist when it is presented by the researchers. Then you will come across that a problem is undertaken. There are 3 variables which have been taken up. Say I went through a thesis which was on civil engineering, and that was with respect to the concrete reinforcement techniques. Now, number of techniques are there, but the person has started with one particular technique in 1 year, another year another technique is taken up, third study different technique is taken up. So the researcher has not classified the studies into what are the steel reinforced studies, where are the glass reinforced concrete studies, where are the fly ash and so on, the studies. He could not classify. Likewise, when we deal with the research, then there are certain studies which says there is a significant effect of a particular reinforcement technique on the strength of the concrete. There are other studies which say there is no difference of the steel reinforced concrete and the concrete strength. So the studies vary with respect to the findings also. So people do not classify the studies either on the basis of the intervention or on the basis of the findings which they come across. So they simply present it on the basis of the chronological order. Another is when they present one study, different information is included. When they go to the next study, altogether different information comes into picture. Say, for example, when you are preparing an abstract of the finding, you start that presentation with certain questions in mind. And one of the question may be the objective of the study. So every study you need to include what were the objectives of the study. What was the methodology followed in the study? What were the controls exercised in the study? What were the major findings of the study? But many of the people would, as rightly you said, that they pick up the abstract written by the author, include it into the review. So there is no coherence from one study to another study. Another difficulty we experience is writing review in present tense. Student have started, the study had control. They don't write had. They only go with the present study examines the relationship between these two variables. You cannot write a review in present tense. It has to be in the past tense. So missing conclusions. In some of the theses we come across that the student has presented the review. At the end, he doesn't go for gap analysis and he doesn't arrive at the conclusions on the basis of the presented review of related literature. And abruptly, there is an end to the chapter on review of related literature. But review of related literature needs to be summarized, gaps need to be identified and linked to the problem which is taken. Because you need to build a connection between the problem you have selected and what the previous studies say. Maybe it serves many more purposes for your study that we'll discuss when we go for the second question. The second question is, what is review of related literature? Anybody would like to answer to this? Yes, from ETB studio first. The second question.
Compulsory to get the things in chronological order.
That is not necessary.
No, that is what I said, that basically the student find it easy to present the review in chronological order, but that doesn't involve any critical analytical ability on the part of the learner. So what is needed is the studies which are available, you need to find out what are the studies which have one similar technique or intervention used, club those studies. You have studies which say there is significant effect. There are studies which say there is no significant effect of this. There may be other studies which have taken different technique. So you need to classify on the basis of the findings of the study also, rather than presenting the literature in chronological order. Second question to the house is, what exactly is review of related literature? What do we understand by this review of related literature? Anybody? Through the previous studies. Okay. Review of related literature going through the previous study. That is the answer given by you. Anything else? Ma'am, would you like to answer?
Trying to find out the gaps basically.
Okay. Try to identify the gaps. Okay.
There might be like if, any problem statement might be had different parameters.
Right.
So according to each parameter, each and every study should be previous study should be reviewed. And
Okay.
what are the gaps? What is the relationship?
No, that's right. But what exactly this involves? The review of related literature when we say it is only going through.
No, madam. It's analysis.
Analytics.
Okay. Any center would like to respond to SPFU?
That is the basic technical analysis or whatever already established clearly already there. Maybe that's the and also what are the other facts that are already established. So that will become our starting point. So that is also included in the review of literature.
Fine. Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else from Hassan, Haveri?
Madam, good morning, madam.
Good morning.
This is Mohan Kumar Chauhan.
Ji, sir. Go ahead.
Madam, about literature is concerned, plenty of literatures are available on any topic.
Right.
But we have to review the pertaining literatures, and also we have to segregate the literature according to our problems.
Right. So you mean to say it involves identification, classification,
segregation of literatures.
Right. Classification on the basis of maybe the intervention, maybe findings, maybe the parameters, and
maybe based on the methodology.
Right.
Or
Right.
based on some techniques.
Fine. So
based on available tools. Example, today you look at the number of tools are available. Example, right. GIS is there, GPS right. is there,
right,
and many other systems concepts are there.
Okay.
How to identify the literatures and segregate those literatures, and we have to find out the gaps, finding the gaps.
Okay. So thank you very much. I think he has given very appropriate answer to that. Review of related literature does not involve only collection of material and going through the material, but it is much more than that. It means you need to identify the relevant studies to your problem. You cannot include any study which has been done. Many people, when they take up studies, whatever study is available in the area, say they have taken up management, but their study involves job satisfaction, stress, and emotional intelligence. But whatever is literature is available, it is not concerning the job satisfaction. They include it in the review of related literature. Whether it is relevant to the problem at hand or not, it's not analyzed. So identification of relevant means only those studies which have taken up job satisfaction, which have taken up stress, and which have taken up emotional intelligence. So all these three variables, the studies which have been done, forms a part of review of related literature. Or rightly said, when we go to writing or developing a software for a particular purpose, the softwares can be written in different languages, C, VS, C++, and Java, and so on. So many different languages can be used. Now here comes the question of, you cannot include C++. You need to see which particular language was more efficient and effective in writing a software to serve a particular purpose. So you need to include only those studies which have been in a particular language which you are going to use, and then how effective that language has been formed. You need to look. Another is when you are trying to find the relevant literature, Maybe you come across large number of studies which have been done in US, Canada, Australia, Germany, and so on. But you never look to how many studies have been done in my context, the Indian context, where I'm going to use this particular technique. So identification simply means that you try to see the variables, you try to see the context in which the study has been taken. And many a times when we do studies in technical education, we forget, we start including all the studies which have been done in the general education stream rather than in the technical education. So the studies need to be context specific. The related variables which you have taken up, that needs to be seen whether that study covers those variables or not. And then the person need to critically read through the material. It doesn't involve only identification. It requires ability to critically review that literature so as to identify the similarities, dissimilarities in the approaches, in the methodology, in the tools, in the findings, in the context in which the study has been taken up. And then it involves reproduction of the already carried out research. Because you have to write down an abstract and include it in your thesis. So if you look at the definition, it clearly says that review of literature is systematic. It cannot be haphazard. It cannot be an ad hoc approach followed to carry out the review of related literature. So what people do, they go to the journal, whatever article is available, they pick up, include it. That is not the way how review of related literature should be started. It should start with certain basic questions in mind, and every study needs to answer those questions. It is explicit. Explicit means whatever study you have included, that must clearly tell the reader what exactly was the study, what methodology was adopted, what were the controls exercised, and what is the finding of that particular study, and whether there is agreement or disagreement with the previous research or not. It is reproducible method. Reproducible means you are able to reproduce the research which has already been carried out. And it involves identification, evaluation, and synthesis of that. So it doesn't end with chronological presentation of the review. It requires higher abilities of critical analysis and synthesis. So that means you are evaluating each and every piece of research which is available and then putting it in a coherent manner in your dissertation work. And in addition to that, if you see a very simple definition which has been given, it is identification. Location. Location means where the review is available. Is it available in the book? Is it available in the journal? Is it available in the dictionary? Is it available in the index? Is it available in the main thesis written by the person? So there are number of locations from where the review can be carried out. At present, you have web resources, that is all e-journals, e-thesis, Shodh Ganga, which is a repository of all the theses carried out in the country. So what is the location of that? Then analysis of documents containing information related to research problem. So in simple words, it is identification. It is critical evaluation of those pieces of research, and then it is systematic reproduction of the research which has already been carried out. With this understanding of the concept of review of related literature, let's go to the very third question. The third question I'm posing to the house is, why is it essential to carry out review of related literature? क्यों जरूरी है review करना? Yes, any center would like to respond to? Mulana? Maybe University, the Department of Chemistry. Hanji, please go ahead.
Ma'am, actually, literature review is required to know what is done previously and what are the gaps in the research.
Okay.
And it may possibly the technology available that time, the original research was done. Now we have better technology, better method. So maybe those problems could be solved now.
Okay. Another is to select the methodology. Anybody else?
More clarification on your objectives also, basically.
Okay.
You can get it.
Okay. So stating the objectives for a particular study also requires review of related literature. Any other center would like to respond to? Yes, please go ahead. Yes.
To know the possible outcomes.
Okay, to know the possible outcomes. Chalo, let's quickly look at the purposes which are served by the review of related literature. Now here, I have given the references Johnson and Johnson and Flink. They have enlisted large number of purposes which are served by review of related literature. And the very first, learn about the areas and type of studies being done at the present time. Now, when a researcher is at a stage of selecting a problem, he goes through the literature. The purpose is to find out which is the area which is being researched these days. What are the current practices in research? Whether research follows descriptive research, correlational research, or the focus has shifted to qualitative research, where more of case studies, ethnographic studies are being taken up. Another is what you have already said is maybe the technology used in 1980s was entirely different than the technology which is being available in the present day context. So the researcher goes through the material which is available in various sources of information to find out what are the emerging areas of research and where the people are trying to actually have their studies to increase or enhance the efficiency, effectiveness, productivity, or solve a problem which is faced by the industry or the society. Another is that you need to provide rationale for your study. So why you are taking up a study in this particular area, that can be the research which has been carried out. So justification for the study can be prepared on the basis of the research which has been done. So that means when you identify gaps in the research, that gives you the scope or an opportunity to take research, further research in that particular area. Another one is if research is inconclusive. Whatever studies have been carried out in the past, there is no conclusion which you can arrive at. The results are conflicting. One study say it has an effect, another study say it doesn't have any effect. That means there is still scope to undertake study in that area to arrive at certain definite conclusions. Then you go to that it helps you in defining the problem. It only doesn't help you in selecting the problem, but it helps you to define the problem. Define means what are the variables which you are going to manipulate, which are the variables you are going to control, and what are likely to be the possible outcomes of that study that can be seen from the previous studies which have been undertaken. And very rightly, one of our colleagues said that when you do the review of related literature, it helps you stating the objectives of your study explicitly. I'll give you, if you go to these sites, you come across people don't know how to write objectives. And here, when you look at the previous researches, it gives you a clear idea whether you are going to have your objective, which simply says study, or to study the relationship, or to study the effect. Now, these three things are different. Existing status you want to study, you want to build the relationship or association between two variables, or you want to manipulate one variable and see its effect on the other variable. So whether to study the effect is the right way of writing it, to study the relationship is the right way. So you get insight into what exactly you are aiming at, and you are able to break down that aim into its specific objectives. Then, very rightly at the center, person said select methodology. Now here, very rightly, initially, our colleague said there are different ways of taking up research. You can use survey research, you can use case study research, you can have experimental research, you can have ex post facto research, or you can have evaluation research carried out. So which particular design of research would be appropriate for taking up the study? That decision can be made by the researcher by going through the literature. So whichever technique has been most frequently used to study the effect, would you like to be in line with that technique, or would you like to have innovative method of studying the effect? Whether you would like to control the similar variable, or you would like to add one more variable which will act as a control variable in that particular situation to arrive at the conclusion. So design of the study, you get an insight into what methodologies have been used to undertake the study and what exactly you would like to take up, because you can find out the drawbacks in the designs which have been previously used. So you can identify the appropriate methodology for research. Then the sampling procedures. Many a times in sciences engineering, 3-5 observations. Now, is it sufficient that we go by 5 observations, or is it required that we have more number of observations? So sample means in engineering and science, if you're not including human resources, then the number of observations which are to be made. In case of social sciences management, we are more concerned with the number of people who need to be included. So what is the optimal size of a sample to draw generalizations or to arrive at the conclusions on the basis and generalize the findings on a particular population? That is the question which we can answer by going through the previous studies. Because when a study is presented, the delimitations of the study are also indicated. So you need to get a clue. You need to avoid those delimitations to arrive at generalizations. Then very rightly you have said the tools. So there are different techniques, different tools which can be used. So even if you're going to have the tools, somebody said you have different languages. In social sciences, we'll say that standardized tests are available. So which particular test is used to measure emotional quotient of the people? Or which particular test is being used by the researcher to measure the job stress? That we are going to zero down on the basis of the previous literature. Then it doesn't stop here. Once the review is carried out, it is used for analyzing and interpreting the findings of your study. When you go through the thesis, this is again a problem. When the findings of the study are discussed in the chapter, no link is built between the previous studies and the present study. So we do not say whether the findings are in tune with the findings of the previous studies, or previous findings, they lend support to the finding of the present study. We only present the finding of our study without building a connection between this. So while you are interpreting, many times the previous research will provide you the reasons for a particular finding. Why did you find a positive correlation? Or why did you find a negative correlation? Why did you find no correlation between the two variables? That reasoning you can arrive at from the previous studies. Then write proposals. Review also help you, because nowadays in engineering, science, humanities, you need to have sponsored projects. All faculty members need to write the proposal for funding. As a researcher, I need to write a synopsis to register myself for the PhD. There also, I need a review of related literature. Then to defend the current professional practices. Whatever are the existing processes, phenomena, conditions, those can be justified on the basis of the previous study. What researchers said, whether the current practices can be justified on the basis of evidence which is available. That is what we are looking at when we are going through the review. Then find out where to get support for your research. Now, many a times, science and engineering, you need to use a tool or a technique, but you don't have the technology available in your laboratories, in your workshops. When you go through the earlier studies, you come to know this work has been carried out in Germany in such university. Now you have the access to that person. You can write to the person, you can collaborate with the university, access their technology and utilize it for the research purpose. So you find out who's a person who has the expertise in that area. And if you really want an expert opinion on your proposal, on the methodology, on the sampling, or maybe the possible outcomes of your study, you can send your papers to that expert, get his critical opinion about that, and modify accordingly. So you can bank upon the expertise, you can bank upon the resources, you can bank upon the technology, you can bank upon the tools which are available, not in your institution, but outside the country also. This is the beauty of ICT now. Then provide access to evaluated programs and help to select criteria to do our own assessment. Now here, if say certain software has been evaluated, you know the criteria on the basis of which that software has been evaluated. If an architectural design has been evaluated by somebody, it gives you a glimpse of the criteria used for evaluation of an architectural design. You can use the same criteria. You can adapt the criteria according to the context in which you are taking up a research, or you can modify the existing criteria if you think it has certain limitations. So the existing criteria for evaluation can be adopted, adapted, modified. So the researcher jobs become easier because there is some base information which is available, right? Then satisfy the curiosity about an issue. Many times it happens like you have developed a software in the computer lab, you have validated in the laboratory setting. But now what are the reactions of your customers to that? So are there studies which have been carried out where the customer satisfaction, now say for Windows 2016, We all use that. Windows 2016, how many people are satisfied with 2016? How many were satisfied with 2010 or Windows 8 or so on? If I have to do, is there any study which is available? So I don't want to take up a research study, but I only want to satisfy my curiosity whether I'm facing difficulties. Are the people across the board satisfied with new version of Windows? Are they happy? So I would like to go through the literature. So these are some of the purposes, and in nutshell, I would say the review of related literature, when taken up, it serves significant purposes. Significant purposes by answering the following questions. Now, what are these questions? Question: has the problem been researched earlier or not? If there are large number of studies and they are conclusive, then maybe an indication to me there is no need to take up further research in this area, because all the studies are arriving at the same conclusion. I can very well accept that. So maybe there is no future scope of research. But yes, if there is some kind of inconclusive finding, or there are limited number of variables included in a particular study, different studies, different variables have been studied, maybe it leaves a scope for taking up further research. Then I said it will answer your question, what is the need for study? So you are trying to identify a gap and trying to fill in that gap by taking up further research. What variables have been studied? So where the focus of the previous research has been. So whether you would like to include similar variables, same variable, or you would like to add or delete one or two of the variables, or the things which have not been controlled, you would like to control those variables. Then what were the research questions or research objectives? What design? Then in what context and on what sample the study was conducted? What measuring tools and what were the findings? Were the findings conclusive or inconclusive? And do findings of studies contradict or support your finding? So all these questions which are there in the mind of the researcher can be answered with the help of review of related literature. So it serves number of purposes. If it serves, then the question arises, many times people say, the bigger the review of literature, better it is. Do you agree? This is a statement. Bigger doesn't mean better. Why? Why do you say so? Why do you say so? Bigger doesn't mean better. Yes?
Madam, it should be appropriately related to your problem.
Okay. So it is the significance is the relevant. If you are able to synthesize the literature which is available, it serves better purposes rather than just including studies from 60 onwards till 2016. So that means I'm going to cover studies for the 46 years. Bigger doesn't mean better. You need to restrict. Maybe you say, okay, for the past 20 years, research which has been carried out in the area, I'm going to review that. So you impose a delimitation on yourself that you are going to review only studies which have been taken up, kab se kab tak? 80 to 20 years bola, so 86 to 2016. So I'm not going beyond 80. I'll not include studies related to 75, 74, 73. But if your area of research has not been researched by many people, but there are 20 studies, then each studies need to be minutely reviewed. If there are only 15 studies which have been carried for the past 20 years in the area of my research, then all those 25 studies need to be included in the review. But I need to go into minute details of those 25 studies. That also I need to take into account. Then let's go to the next question which I had raised. What are the sources of literature? A simple question raised to the participant. What are the sources of information? Boliye.
Hello,
Hanji.
madam. I'm calling from Gandhi Engineering College.
Hanji, please go ahead.
The sources of literature may be in concern of existing problem statement, whatever already defined.
Right.
And also, we are having brainstorming session. We find out some the concept of literature of any problem statements. Then survey, or we are having following some review of some related to already working of the fields that application fields related to that subject. So in that concern, we find out these are the way of sources to find out some literature in concern of some concepts.
The sources of literature, as you said, brainstorming is a technique to find out the ways the problem can be solved. Maybe
Yes.
you are coming out with different methodology, different sample, different approach, or
Yes.
maybe, right? So brainstorming is when you really want to generate alternate solution to the problem without evaluating those alternatives. That
Yes.
is brainstorming. It's generation of ideas.
Yes, ma'am.
But when we say sources of literature, I'm particularly referring to what are the different sources from where you try to get the review of literature. Can you be more specific, sir? You refer to books, you refer to journals. What else? What else? Conference papers,
Conference.
websites, e-journals, or kuch?
That means that concept already defined, means existing some.
Yeah, so existing body of research from where you can get the information. Now see the list of the information. See on the PowerPoint. Hanji, PPT दिखाओगे तो बोलेंगे. है भी दिखानी पड़ी है ना. Okay, dictionaries. What you get out of dictionary? What do you get out of the dictionary when you are doing research? Yes, Boli? Okay, the meaning. If you are using a particular variable, say reinforcement. Now, what is the exact meaning of that word reinforcement that is available in the dictionary? Thesaurus. Thesaurus gives me synonyms. If I'm using reinforcement, are there other words which convey the same meaning? I go to thesaurus and check so that when I go to review of related literature, I can use or, and. I can use those words and narrow my search or broaden my search. Then indexes. What are indexes? What do we get from indexes? Yes. Anybody who would like to clarify what are the indexes? आप देखते हो ना इंडेक्स दिया होता है सब्जेक्ट इंडेक्स ऑथर इंडेक्स तो इंडेक्स क्या होगा
Hello.
जी प्लीज गो अहेड
That index refer to the particular concept already somewhere defined. Means that index page number, like that means journal refer to.
Okay, that is one aspect, sir. When I say index, index is enlistment of the work which has been carried out in that area. There are educational indexes, There are psychological indexes available where you get to know what are the kind of researches which have been taken up in this area and where that research is available. Then you have encyclopedias. Many of you might be referring to encyclopedia. How encyclopedia differs from a book or a journal? Yes? How it differs from a book or a journal? पढ़ा तो होगा कहीं पे, वर्ल्ड एनसाइक्लोपीडिया पढ़ा होगा, साइंस एनसाइक्लोपीडिया देखा होगा. So what is that? Anybody who would like to throw light on? Okay, so encyclopedia, thank you so much. Encyclopedia provides you a very comprehensive, consolidated information on a particular topic, starting from its origin to its current level practice. So it gives you the theoretical formulation, it gives you the current level of research and how the research has grown over a period of time and what are the current practices in that particular area. So it is very comprehensive but brief information about a particular area of specialization or a topic. Then books. Books are a source of theoretical foundation for any researcher. And books can be one author which has very coherent information available. Books are also edited version of, or books may be where different chapters have been contributed by different people. So you can use books for undergoing or for studying the underlying theory component to what your research is. Then abstracts. Abstracts are available in many forms. You have annotated abstracts also and you have abstracts also. What is the difference between abstract and annotated abstract? Nahi, I think main galat hu. Book can be booked as well as annotated reference to that book. But abstract contains the complete information, right? Then you go to research reports and thesis. Research report to aapko jante ho. So maybe it is produced by an organization, by an industry, by a researcher, anybody. And thesis, which is a partial requirement for a person to complete his master's or doctoral work. References and bibliographies. Antar hai koi references and bibliography mein? Anybody who can differentiate between the two? Simple term hai, reference and bibliography. Yes? Any center would like, Ji?
Yes.
Any center would like to clarify the
Yes,
difference between reference and bibliography?
Yes, ma'am. I'm calling from Categorizing College.
Ji.
Ma'am, related to bibliographies means whatever we have followed with for our writing that concept, what are the following journals and conferences we have followed, that should be, we have references, that should be called as references. What are the related to journals, we refer it to analysis the concept.
Sir, chalo, I think you have started the discussion. Reference means any cited reference in your text and you enlisted at the back, that comes under references. But any work which you have referred for undertaking the research, but you have not cited that in your text, that becomes a bibliography. So where the exact cited references are including, that is reference. Where all the work which you have consulted but not referred into the text, that becomes a bibliography. So they provide you information about the various types of studies, the books, journals, articles which are available related to your area of work. Then annotated bibliographies. Now, bibliography is simply giving you the reference of that work. But annotated bibliographic gives you an abstract what is contained in that reference. That is given. Say, for example, I give a book like I say Dalip Singh, Emotional Intelligence, and Prentice Hall, and so on. Now, this is simply I've included in the bibliography. But annotated bibliography will be the book written on emotional intelligence by Dalip Singh has been divided into 7 chapters. The first chapter deals with this, second chapter deals, it gives me an overview of what is contained in that chapter. That is annotated bibliography. So when I refer to annotated bibliography, I make a decision whether I should go through that book or not. Bibliography only give me this book is available. So whether it will be relevant or irrelevant, I can't make a judicious choice. Journal. So what information is available in journals? Journals.
They deal with any specific subject.
Okay. And they deal with current practices. So what is current research going on and what are the current perceptions, current opinions? Journals normally provides you current information. Then review in journals and compiled works. This is another source of information. When I say review in journals, many journals towards the end would include a book review. And you get to know that a person who has read a particular book, his critical opinion is available at the end of the journal. So now that makes you wiser whether you need to go through or you don't need to go through. Maybe if somebody is putting a very critical comment on something, maybe you are motivated to go through that, oh, why the person is criticizing this book so much? I should also read through. Collective works. What are collective works? Collective works. People who have done work on different aspects of same topic, now they join hands together and come out with a comprehensive report. That is a collective work. Or when people are now collaborating across the globe for the research component, so it is done in Australia, India, Russia, USA. All these 4 people are working in different contexts, but then they join hand and present the findings of, or maybe I'm working on a very significant or a minute part of a research study. And other person is working on another part, and then they club it and then provide the comprehensive review. That is collective work. Now, can you classify these sources of information into any broad categories? कुछ emerge होता है from all this list of review of related literature?
एक कैटेगरी तो हो गई जर्नल्स वगैरह की हो गई, जर्नल हो गई, पीएचडी थीसिस हो गई, ये हो गई जो करंट है बेसिकली. एक इंफॉर्मेशन हो गई बुक्स हो गई तो बहुत ओल्ड पड़ी हैं,
नहीं भी होती है.
हाँ नहीं भी होगी.
Okay.
बट कभी
Okay. Okay. Any other way of classifying these sources of information?
Hello.
Hanji.
Good morning. This is from Satish from
Hanji,
GC
please.
Hassan.
Hanji, please go ahead, sir.
The sources of information, the primary and secondary and tertiary. The primary means which is the first-hand information. Example like journals, and the secondary is textbooks that is refined from the journals.
Fine, thank you very much. So the technical,
the tertiary,
yeah, sir, tertiary to preliminary bolenge. So
yes.
We have 3 different types. Thank you so much. You are absolutely right when you say that you can classify
yes.
these sources into 3: preliminary information, which you get from dictionary, thesaurus, indexes, abstracts, you get this information. Then you have primary sources of information. That means the person who has undertaken a research has published the research. He is the author of that work. It is primary source of information. Then the secondary source of information is, I as a researcher quote the work of, say, Dr. Sunil, Dr. Bedi, or Dr. Tulsi, and so on. So I become the secondary source of information. I've gone through the work. Now I am I'm including those work and commenting on that work. That is secondary source of information. So you have dictionary, indexes, thesaurus, they are what? Preliminary sources, or even indexes, they are primary preliminary. Then you have primary is reports, thesis, and journals. They are primary sources of information. Secondary sources, a book contains a chapter on the research carried out in a particular area. So that becomes a secondary source of information. A journal article which gives you review of related literature, for that review it becomes a secondary source of information. So all these three sources of information you need to tap, and it is always desirable we start with preliminary information, preliminary source, then we go to the secondary and the primary source of information. You save a lot of time. Then the review, there can be certain sources of information which are empirical based, others are opinion based. All your conceptual papers, they are actually opinion based. And all your data information based articles, they are empirical based. So one researcher needs to be very clear, is it only an empirical study, or is it only the perception, opinion, or of the person who's writing that? So you need to be able to differentiate between the two. So then we move on to that. Here you have, okay, I think I need to go back. All these, with the technology, now you have access to large number of sources of information. I'll just give you a glimpse of, not going through the details of, but a glimpse of the sources which are available. Okay. Usko kaat hi diya hoega. Fine. I think I missed that. But anyway, let's now move on to the next question. What are the steps involved in a review of related literature? Boliye ji, agar mujhe review karna hai, what are the steps involved in review of related literature? When we said it is a systematic process, what are the steps involved in review of related literature? How one should proceed?
We have to identify the related studies.
Okay. How do we identify the related studies?
Which I have taken. Are those variables included in the previous studies or not?
Okay. इसको क्या बोलते हो टेक्निकली? ठीक हो आप? वेरिएबल जो आपने लिया है, that should be taken into consideration. So it is a systematic process. Anybody who would like to throw light on why we say it is systematic? Because it involves number of steps. And I would simply give you Johnson and Christensen. They have tried to give you a list, the steps which can be followed. But I go to another classification given by Gay, which is a simpler way of looking at the steps involved in carrying out review of related literature. The very first step is identifying the keyword. Now here, when I say the keyword, it is, for example, I said I'm going to study compare the strength of steel and glass reinforced concrete. Now, say for example, I have the title of the study, compare the strength of steel and glass reinforced concrete. Now, here the key word is strength, steel reinforced, glass reinforced concrete. So these are my keywords which I'm going to use while I go to review of related literature. Or say for example, I'm writing develop an algorithm. Develop an algorithm for किस चीज के लिए करेंगे? Anybody? Algorithm क्यों कर रहे हैं? Algorithm to write a program for ensuring security in local area network. मैं algorithm develop कर रही हूं to ensure security in the local area network. Now, what are my keywords here? The keyword is, yes, algorithm, local area network, and maybe security. So let me take an example from management that I'm trying to study. The problem statement or the title of my work is leadership styles, job satisfaction of employee, and employee commitment. Now, relationship among the leadership style, job satisfaction, and employee commitment. Now, it's very simple. What are the 4 ingredients here? Relationship, leadership style, job satisfaction, and employee commitment. So, from the title of your study, you can identify the key words and then you can look into those keywords. And you can broaden or narrow the keyword search. वो कैसे करेंगे? When you go to the website, search engine, you can use the word and you narrow the search because it will immediately give you the result for 2 things together. Or broadens our search. आपने कर दिया और आपने कहा either it is emotional intelligence or emotional quotient. So wherever this term appears in the literature, all those studies would be included there. Not narrows our search. आपने लिखा emotional intelligence, right? एंड में तो मैंने लिख दिया था इमोशनल कॉम्पिटेंस. एक ही बात हो जाती है कि कॉम्पिटेंसेस क्या आ जाती हैं. बट व्हेन आई एम यूजिंग इमोशनल, सो आई एम नॉट ट्राइंग टू फोकस ऑन इमोशनल स्टेबिलिटी. सो आई से इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस, नॉट इमोशनल स्टेबिलिटी. कर सकती हूँ. I say extrovert, that is my study, not introvert. So I am only interested in how extrovert perform in a particular situation. I'm not concerned with how introverts perform in a particular situation, right? So I'm trying to narrow a search by putting not. I'm broadening a search by including and or. ठीक है? Then ये दोबारा क्यों आ गया जी? मैं ही गलत हो गई. ओके, अब देखिए आपके पास यू हैव गूगल, यू हैव एक्साइट, हॉटबॉट, वेब क्रॉलर, लाइकॉस, डॉगपाइल, मामा रूज. ऑल दीज सर्च इंजन्स आर एट योर डिस्पोजल फ्रॉम वेयर यू कैन गो एंड फाइंड आउट योर लिटरेचर. यूज करा किसी ने? नहीं करा? करा? Anybody? आप रिसर्च के रिव्यू के लिए कौन कौन से सर्च इंजन? गूगल. ओके, आप देखिए. Yes, I think these are number of sites which are available. Internet pe you have large number of sources. There are public internets which are giving you Argus Clearinghouse, Education Internet Guide, Britannica Internet Guide, Internet Public Library, and so on. These are all public internet sources which you can tap. ये तो थे आपकी web sources. In print, you have all journals, books, dictionaries, encyclopedias, which are available in your libraries, and you can refer to those. I'll just give you a few examples of these. When you are going to various sources, you have dictionaries. And today, you don't have general dictionary. You have a medical dictionary, you have physics dictionary, right? You have electronics dictionary. So go to a specific dictionary so that you get a technical meaning of the term which you are using. This is Wiley Online Library, which gives you Wiley Encyclopedia of Electrical and Electronics Engineering. So there are a number of publishers who have now started with their online libraries. Books are available like Pearson, Sage, you have Prentice Hall. All those sources are where you can have books, you can have encyclopedia, you can have dictionaries which are available to you online. Then you have, see here, IEEE Explorer. Many of my colleagues from engineering and technology, they would refer to IEEE Explorer. Go to the journals. If you are a subscriber to this, then you can have full download of the articles which are available. And you have large number of areas covered here. Then there is one Science Direct, very reliable source of information for all your studies in the field of engineering and technology. Otherwise, you get all these studies, right? Then you have directory of open access journals. Now, this directory provides you a list of 9,412 journals which you can freely access. And you have 6,582 searchables at article level. ये आपके पास है, और data information from 128 countries is available. और ये total number of articles which you can access. जब मैंने इसको अभी थोड़ी दिन last month I accessed it. Then you have annual reviews which are available. अब ये भी आपको online available and which you can access, and you can see during 1 year what has been done in that particular area, annual reviews. Then you have journals which provide you current information. Then you have all these international journals. Aajkal everything is accessible on a click of a mouse. You don't need to. Aage review used to take up 6 months. Abhi to you can do it if you are consistent in your effort, half of the time which is that was needed earlier. Ab ye, I don't know how many of you refer to all these professional associations. They have journals in specific areas. Springer is another one where you get a lot of information on various branches, starting with bioengineering, then going to signals and communication and so on. And this is what we all refer to Google Scholar. And you have access to number of studies. Then there are government sites which can form the basis of your research in India. आपकी नीति आयोग बहुत कुछ आपको मिल जाता है. MHRD की साइट पे आप जा सकते हैं, NBA की साइट पे आप जा सकते हैं, policy documents you can. Then you have, this is our AICT site which is available. Then this is the repository of the thesis which have been submitted in various fields in India. That is Shodh Ganga, freely accessible. कोई भी चाहे कोई भी thesis आप full देख सकते हो उसमें. And then, हाँ जी, now आपने sources of information tap कर लिए. Then you go locate that information on the source. Then you review and summarize. अब देखिए इसमें ना बहुत जरूरी क्या है कि whenever you go to a particular source, identify an article or a piece of research, first thing is go through the abstract in totality. On the basis of reading the abstract, you can decide whether I need to go through the article, or is it relevant to what research I'm going to take up, or is it irrelevant to what I'm doing? Is it worthwhile to go through? So you take a decision by just going through the abstract. So when you are reading through an abstract, आप क्या कर रहे हो? Actually, then you go to going through the headings and subheadings of the article. So you are skimming through. Skim करते हो, just निकालना होता है कि relevant है या नहीं है. Many times we scan through the articles. Scan means क्या इस article में ये terminology use हुई है, ये variable इसने study किया है. Then we scan through the article and look for a particular variable. Once I find that the article is relevant, then I read that article to understand that article. Reading for understanding. Once I read it for understanding, then I try to find answer to the questions I have raised in the beginning of my review. कि इसमें objective क्या थे, इसकी methodology क्या थी, इसका sample क्या था, इसकी findings क्या है, इसकी delimitation क्या है, और इसके suggestions for further research क्या है. So I try to prepare an abstract or summarize that article with respect to those 6 questions which I have raised in the beginning. So आप उसको करते हो, पढ़ते हो, फिर साथ ही साथ आप उसकी रेफरेंस को completely jot down करते हो. As a researcher, we faced number of problems when I did my research in 80s. We didn't have any internet at that time. So we used to go to the library. And if I had missed a reference, it was a hell to locate the same reference from the library. क्योंकि वो याद ही नहीं होता था कि किस जर्नल में, किस बुक में आपने ये बुक पढ़ा था. But is very relevant. Now you need to scan through each and every piece of information to arrive at that. और कई बार मिली भी नहीं. So you need to delete that work from your thesis. This has happened. But now with the technology, you are able to record that reference in toto immediately once you approach it. तो मुश्किल ही नहीं है, वहां से कॉपी करिए, अपने पास रखिए, and then you can organize that whether you want to do it in APA format or you want to do it in IEEE format, वो फर्क हो जाता है. अब आपने रेफरेंस भी बना ली है, समरी भी बना ली है, और आपने कुछ चीजें हैं जो डायरेक्ट कोट्स उठाई हैं वहां से. तो दैट शुड ऑलवेज बी इन कंप्लीट फॉर्म विद इन्वर्टेड कॉमा. With inverted comma. And once you have prepared a summary, you need to code that article. Summary. आपने जो बनाया abstract, उसको code कीजिए. Coding means, जैसे कि हमने कहा था glass reinforced, तो मैंने glass reinforced का abbreviation दे दिया GR, steel reinforced का दे दिया SR, and स्ट्रेंथ को मैंने लिख लिया S एंड स्मॉल t. अगर एक आर्टिकल ने सिर्फ ग्लास रीइंफोर्स्ड को कंक्रीट से कंपेयर किया है, तो आई विल पुट ग्लास रीइंफोर्स्ड C, ये कोडिंग दे दीजिए. अगर उसने दोनों को स्टडी किया था, ग्लास रीइंफोर्स्ड और स्टील रीइंफोर्स्ड, तो GR एंड SR, दैट आई गिव. अब मैंने फाइंडिंग में देखा कि ग्लास रीइंफोर्स्ड वाज मोर स्ट्रेंथ, हैड मोर स्ट्रेंथ then the steel reinforced. तो मैं क्या करती हूँ, GR higher than SR उसके ऊपर लिख दिया. So when I consolidate all this, जितनी स्टडीज मेरी GR greater than SR कह रही है, वो क्लब कर देती हूँ, जितनी कह रही है नो, उसको क्लब कर देती हूँ. So I put coding on the abstract. So that becomes handy, easier for a researcher to consolidate the information. अब देखिए, जो आप लिखते हो, it has to be consistent, clear, complete and correct. ये 4 important characteristics your abstract should, or the summary which you have prepared, you must ensure. Why consistency is required? Because if you are going to synthesize the information, if each piece of information is including the answer to the similar question, it is easy to synthesize. And if each piece is giving a different information, synthesis becomes a problem. So consistent style rakhiye so that you are able to collate the information at the end. Clarity. Don't use any abbreviation if you are not able to recall it later at a later point of time. Always use standardized abbreviation. And whatever you write has to be legible, clear, so that it makes sense to you. Clarity. अगर आप ही नहीं बता पा रहे कि क्या कहना चाह रहे हो, कोई बाहर से आके तो बताएगा ही नहीं, because you have written that. Then complete. Complete means everything you wanted to include in your summary while collating the information. That information should be available and it should be accurately written, because we are saying you are simply reproducing the work which has been done. So it has to be correct. I cannot give my own interpretation to what the researcher has written. I can only critically comment on that research, right? So it has to follow these 4 characteristics. अब मैं और यहाँ पे कुछ points हैं कि if you want complete, a paper has been found which is very much directly related to your work and you would like to refer to it again and again, then it is always desirable that you retain a full copy of that paper. Okay? So that you don't miss any important point which you would like to refer to at a later point of time. Kuch cheezein like table you want to include in the summary, and your abstract you would like to include in the, say for example, criteria. Now criteria has been enlisted in the paper. एक है कि मैं उसके points लिख लूं, एक है कि उसने weightages दी है. So I just get a photocopy of the table and I reproduce that. It gives correct information in a simple manner, right? So I need not go into details. So koi bhi graph, chart, figure, which is important and you would like to include in your work, have a copy of that retained on your system or retain a photocopy of that. So this is the most important part of your review of related literature. Ikatha to kar liya. Now the task is to synthesize the information. Or synthesize ke liye, I would say, abhi card koi nahi banata. Nobody goes in for a card preparation. So this point you can miss wherever you have retained the information. If you have done the coding, it becomes very easy. So normally I would say you have a tabular form and one side you write author and researcher, the year in which the work was done. Then you have the variables, V1, V2, V3, if there are 3 variables in the study. Then the methodology. Methodology, now you are saying whether it was descriptive, survey was there, case study was there, experimental was there, ex post facto. So whichever design is most applicable. Say, bande ne sirf correlations padhi hai. So you say correlational study. If the person has gone in for experimental study, cause and effect relationship, then you say experimental. So maybe 1 or 2 designs are applicable in your case. Put that design. Context, whether the study was in the laboratory, was it a simulated one, was it having the real data from the real time people. So context, where the study was taken up. बहुत सारे लोग आजकल हम simulate कर लेते हैं conditions and we see the output of that. But real life, you can't control all those variables which you can control in the laboratories. So it is always better that you try to classify कि simulated environment है या real life environment है. And then the findings. Findings, correlation would be only 3, positive, negative, and 0. Then if you have effect, significant effect, no effect, in favor of whom? वो आपने 3 column. So you try to classify each study. It gives you a snapshot of your studies, similar nature, you club, and then logically present those studies in your review of related literature. So ये जो आपका review है, again it must be complete, correct, clear, coherent and concise. तो अभी मैं सिर्फ आपको एक दो चीजें और बोलना चाहूंगी. लीव दिस. ये आपने रेफरेंसेस एंड बिब्लियोग्राफी की बात की थी. सो आई वुड से इफ यू आर अ पर्सन फ्रॉम सोशल साइंसेस, you need to adopt APA pattern of writing reference. If you are a person from science and engineering, maybe you are following IEEE pattern of writing the references. तो जब आप APA का references follow करते हो, तो you can see how do we include the second name followed by the initial. ये आपका आ रहा है. Books का है author's surname followed by the initials or first names, and then the title of the book, then place of date of publication, title of the book, then place and the publisher name. ठीक है जी. This remains. I think I need not go into all this because ये आपको on the website, you can go to APA, you can see the 6th manual, and you can see the total guidelines for how to write references for a journal, for book, for, and this IEEE की तो सब जगह पड़ी है. So you can get the references. Even your computer these days, if you have added the references, you select those references and then ask the computer to do it. It does the referencing in a particular style. So 3 styles have been added: MLA, APA, and in IEEE. So वो आप easily you can go through, but make sure you use the correct style. कोई भी latest journal उठा लेंगे, उसमें जो style है वो आप follow करें. So that is always with respect to the requirements of. So this is all about review of related literature, that it serves very important function and it tries to answer many of your questions, starting with identification of the problem, defining the problem, then selecting the methodology, then selecting the tools, then analyzing, interpreting the results of your finding, and arriving at logical conclusions of your research. Any question if the participants have at different centers or here in the ETB studio are welcome.